What if the real root of prejudice isn't actually hate? Today, we're going to dig into the revolutionary ideas of psychologist Gordon Allport, a guy who completely turned our understanding of bias and even belief itself on its head.
And really, this was the central question that drove his entire life's work. He proposed that the most powerful engine of discrimination might not be this big, obvious, outright hate, but something far more subtle, something we all do every single day.
You see, Allport didn't just want to understand prejudice. He wanted to find a cure for it, and his search for a practical solution led him to one of the most powerful ideas in all of social psychology. He called it the contact hypothesis. At its core, the idea is pretty simple. Prejudice tends to go down when different groups interact with each other. But, and this is a huge but, there's a crucial catch. The conditions of that contact have to be just right. So what's the magic recipe for success? Well, Allport identified 4 key ingredients. First, you need equal status. No one can be in a position of power over anyone else. Second, common goals. They have to need each other to get something done. Third, cooperation. They've got to work together. And finally, support from an authority. The whole effort needs some kind of official backing, whether it's from a leader, a law, or just a community custom.
Let's see how this works in the real world. Imagine a diverse neighborhood forming a watch group. Okay, so as neighbors, they have equal status. Check. Their common goal is a safer street. Check. They have to cooperate on patrols. Check. And it's all endorsed by the local police. There's your authority support. That's the contact hypothesis, in action, ticking every single box.
And listen, this isn't just some nice-sounding theory. A massive review of over 500 studies, we're talking 250,000 people, came to a crystal-clear conclusion. Allport was right. The right kind of contact just works.
And the power of this idea goes way beyond racial prejudice. Research shows it's really effective at reducing bias against all sorts of different groups, including the elderly, the disabled, and the LGBTQ community.
But here's where Allport's work takes a really fascinating turn. If we have a recipe for tolerance, what's the main ingredient for intolerance? His answer was probably not what you'd expect.
Our common assumption, right, is that discrimination is driven by outgroup hostility, actively disliking people who are different. But Allport argued that a far more powerful and much more common driver is in-group favoritism. That simple, quiet act of just preferring and helping people who are like us. As Allport himself wrote, we can't just assume that a prejudiced thought automatically leads to a discriminatory act. He suspected the mechanism was way more subtle. It's not always about pushing other people down, it's often just about pulling your own group up, which of course has the same unequal result. A perfect everyday example is the high school cafeteria. The tables are almost always segregated by social group, right? Is this because the jocks actively hate the theater kids? Usually not. It's because people just stick to their own, they conform to their in-group. The result is segregation, but often without any real malice behind it at all.
This whole idea of in-group favoritism led Allport to another deep puzzle. He observed that religion, which is so often a powerful source of community and identity, sometimes correlated with high levels of prejudice. How could a system built on love also end up fostering exclusion?
He put the question bluntly. If a faith preaches universal love, why do some of its most frequent attendees also seem to hold the most prejudice? Allport's initial hypothesis was that for some people, both church and prejudice are basically serving the same psychological need. They both can provide that comforting sense of safety, an in-group to belong to, and a feeling of status over others.
His solution to this paradox was a totally new framework. He realized the key wasn't if a person was religious, but how and why they were religious. He proposed there are 2 fundamental motivations for faith. And this distinction is the whole key. An intrinsic orientation is when you truly live your faith. It's the core of your being. An extrinsic orientation, on the other hand, is when you use your faith, whether it's for personal comfort, social status, or even to make business connections. Allport even developed a scale to measure this. And just look at the difference. An intrinsic believer says their faith is behind their whole approach to life. An extrinsic believer might say that church membership helps them get established in the community. It's the difference between living your faith and using your faith.
And this is Allport's incredible enduring legacy. His ideas, now over 70 years old, aren't just history. They are alive and well, actively being tested and expanded by researchers all across the globe.
For a long time,
Most of this research focused on Christian populations. But now, scientists are applying the whole intrinsic versus extrinsic framework to other world religions, like Islam, to see if the model holds up.
And the findings are absolutely fascinating. Researchers are adding all these new layers to Allport's original idea. They found that extrinsic motivation isn't just one single category. It can be driven by a desire for self-fulfillment, a need to avoid a bad reputation, or even the fear of divine punishment.
This is a real-world impact on our well-being. A 2014 study of Pakistani students found that those with a more intrinsic faith reported significantly lower levels of anxiety. In contrast, those with a more extrinsic, self-serving orientation reported much higher levels, just like Allport's theory would predict.
So the key takeaway here is really powerful, and it seems to hold true across different cultures and faiths. A genuine, intrinsic faith, where belief is an end in itself, is consistently tied to better mental health and psychological well-being.
And so we end right back where we began. Allport's work leaves us with a really challenging question. If the quiet engine of prejudice isn't hate, but simply favoring our own, then where should we focus our energy? Is our greatest moral duty to fight our enemies, or is it to honestly and carefully examine the boundaries of our own friendships?